I thought Cam Ward had a very good debut for the Tennessee Titans, but despite that, the disrespect continues. That and more on today's edition of Locked On Titans.
You are Locked On Titans, your daily Tennessee Titans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Titans podcast. I am your host, Tyler Rowland. Titans fans, today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. On today's show, I'm going to give you guys a major injury update on Tyjae Spears, talk about what's going on with Kevin Winston, and we got updates on Sneed, Lloyd Cushenberry, T'Vondre Sweat. Also, I'm going to talk about the panic meter with backup quarterback Femi Oladipo and other things, but we'll start with my grade of Cam Ward's game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I gave him a B+. I'm going to explain why, plus dive into how Cam Ward continues to get disrespected by the national NFL media. Before we get into all of it, do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. Remember, Monday through Friday, Tennessee Titans content all year round, always for free. Make sure that you get subscribed, stay subscribed. It's your team every day here on the Locked On Titans podcast. Speaking of every day, shout out to my everydayers out there tuning in Monday through Friday. Couldn't do it without you guys. If you aren't an everydayer, you need to be one. On tomorrow's show, I'm going to do a preview of joint practices against the Atlanta Falcons. The Titans practice against the Falcons on Tuesday and Wednesday. I'll be here to break down everything you need to know coming out of those. I'll get you ready for the game on Friday night, and then the Titans play again. I'll be going live immediately after that to break it all down. So much Titans content coming your way, not to mention all of the film content that I'm going to be putting out this week for you guys. My Cam Ward film breakdown is already out on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. I'm going to do Femi Oladipo, James Williams, some of the offensive line stuff. So much content. Again, make sure that you stay locked in with me here on the Locked On Titans podcast. But I gave Cam Ward a B+. I look back at the tape, listen to Brian Callahan's press conference going over his evaluation of Cam Ward, and going through, I think B+ is the right grade. Now, I can't give Cam Ward an A for a couple of different reasons. One, I thought the throw on third down on the first drive was incredibly irresponsible, didn't make a lot of sense, and going back and seeing it on tape made me dislike that play more than even when I saw it in real time. It was more risky and more unreasonable. When you go back and watch it, there's nobody. Cam Ward's, you think it's a throwaway. It looked like a throwaway on the broadcast tape, but really the ball lands in bounds next to two Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It just didn't make a ton of sense, and he missed Calvin Ridley on that play early. Brian Callahan said that. Everyone gets mad at me all the time for pointing this stuff out, but Brian Callahan said it himself that Cam Ward left the read a little too quick and missed Calvin Ridley open over the middle, so missing somebody who's open, leaving a clean pocket, making an irresponsible throw. That was by far Cam Ward's worst play of the day, in my opinion, even worse than the near interception, which was his other bad throw. But to me, that was a bad throw, and that was a learning experience. Cam Ward is going up against cover two, and you see the cornerback. The cornerback's supposed to sink into the flat in cover two, but the cornerback runs vertically with Alec Iomanor down the sideline on the vertical route, and the hole isn't there that Cam Ward's trying to fit it into. That is a learning situation of, hey, NFL corners are going to play a little more instinctively. They're going to play a little more intuitively. I can't necessarily force that stuff down the sideline. So those are two bad plays from Cam Ward that, for me, prevent from giving him an A. But everything else that he did out there was absolutely fantastic. We saw the arm strength, we saw the arm angles, we saw the velocity, we saw the wherewithal to come back from adversity when things don't look great on a 1st and 20, on a 3rd and 9, on a 3rd and 6 in the red zone. He gets it done in all those circumstances. Professional operation, ran the offense good. No pre-snap penalties, got everybody in the right spot. We saw Cam Ward audibling, adjusting protections, changing up things with the offense, communicating with his teammates. He looked like a professional quarterback out there. So that's why even with 2 bad plays, is what I would call it, I gave Cam Ward a B+, a very, very solid, very good debut for Cam Ward. And here's the frustrating part, in my opinion. Even though Cam Ward went 5 for 8, 67 passing yards, led a 65-yard touchdown, did all of the good things that I talked about, even with the 2 bad plays mixed in there, you would have no idea that Cam Ward had a very good debut if you were just a casual NFL fan consuming NFL media. And I know a lot of you guys out there I don't care whether the media covers the team. And you know what? The reality is the media covering Cam Ward, how much they do it, whatever, that is not going to determine wins and losses and how successful Cam Ward is throughout his career. So does that stuff ultimately matter? But no, I can't help it. I've been a Tennessee Titans fan for 25 years, and I'm just tired of all of the best players that I've always liked. And even when the Titans have good teams, they just get disrespected and they never get the credit and the adulation that they deserve. And I'm tired of it. Look, I'm a fan of professional sports. None of this matters. Watching these grown men play a child's game for insane amounts of money while we pay $15 a beer and $500 a ticket, none of this matters. So don't give me the argument that this doesn't matter. None of it matters at the end of the day. I want Cam Ward to get the respect that he deserves. I want him to get the treatment that he deserves. I want him to be covered properly. I want the Titans to get their respect. I want the Titans brand to be elevated on a national level. And I'm sorry, I'm not going to apologize for caring about those things, whether they impact winning or not. And to see every ESPN video or every NFL Network segment or all of these national shows, oh, Shedeur Sanders, and Shedeur deserves his shine. I'm not mad at him about this. He played solid in his debut too. But I saw an ESPN video come across my YouTube feed, and it had Shedeur, it had Travis Hunter, it had Jackson Dart in the headline, in the tagline, in the thumbnail, but no Cam Ward. And we just throw Cam Ward into the C block of the show at the very end for a minute to just say, oh, the Titans might have their guy. And I'm tired of hearing this is the least talked about number 1 pick of all time. Then talk more about him. You got real football games to watch now where he's showing you the same things he showed you on tape. Talk about him. It's on you. Everybody acts like they're a victim. Oh, Cam Ward's the least talked about. Like there's not, well, if all of you guys who were saying that he's the least talked about number 1 pick of all time talked about him more, he wouldn't be. So forgive me for going on a baby Rollins rant here about this, because again, I understand that the impact this has on the wins and losses is long-term minimal, but I'm not just a professional sports fan because I like to watch games on Sundays. I'm a sports fan because I love all of it. I love the entire ecosystem. I love the conversations, the debates, the arguments online, the stats, the all-time banter, the back and forth with, oh, I see a Jags fan at the golf course. Screw the Jags. Oh, forget your Titans. Blah, blah. All of that, the entire ecosystem of being a sports fan is just as important as the games themselves. That's why we do it. That's why we care, because it's so enjoyable. So forgive me if I'm annoyed that Cam Ward had a really good debut and he's getting pushed to the back page for all these other guys who, quite frankly, don't deserve as much shine as Cam Ward does. But it's not on the players. It's on the coverage. So with that in mind, shout out to Dart, shout out to Sanders. All had pretty good debuts out there, but Cam Ward did too, and he deserves to be discussed like the number 1 overall pick that he is. But with that being said, Cam Ward was good, but there was a lot out there that wasn't good. Titans fans are panicking, and I'm going to tell you what makes sense to panic about and what doesn't. Today's episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, I'm going to be playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. Yahoo Fantasy has been doing this forever, and they have got the entire situation figured out. Great draft experience, Great app to play on. And to celebrate 28 years of their fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Titans fans, let's continue today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast, breaking down more stuff coming out of the Titans preseason game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We talked about my grade for Cam Ward and why I gave him that grade, all the good and the bad. We talked about the disrespect that he continues to face, but now I want to talk about some things that Titans fans are panicking about coming out of the preseason game and tell you, well, I think it's fair to panic or whether it's not fair to panic. Also, I got a major injury update for you. I'm going to tell you how long Tyjae Spears is expected to be out, what's going on with Kevin Winston, and we should be getting T'Vondre Sweat back soon, so I'll dive into all of that at the end of the show. Do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen each and every day. So, everyone is freaking out about the backup quarterback situation. Brandon Allen was not very good out there. Tim Boyle was even worse. Okay, Tim Boyle had like a 0.7 passer rating in the game or something like that. They were both not very good. And Titans fans are watching the game and looking at that and saying, oh my God, we have a terrible backup situation. Titans need to go make a move. Titans need to go make a trade. Titans got to bring somebody in. We got to have a better backup situation than that. And I'm here to tell you, you shouldn't panic. Now, let me explain it this way. I'm not telling you that you shouldn't panic about the backup quarterback situation because the backup quarterbacks are actually going to be fine. No, they're bad. Brandon Allen is not a good backup quarterback. Tim Boyle is not a good backup quarterback. They're not good. I'm not telling you not to panic because I think they're actually good. I'm telling you not to panic because the plan is for them to not be good. I have explained this throughout the offseason. Like, if Cam Ward were to miss games, winning is not what's best for the Titans. It's not best to win games if Cam Ward gets injured, okay? What's best for Cam Ward is to have quarterbacks who are in the room with him who want to actively invest their time in making him better. The reason that Brandon Allen was signed as the Titans' backup quarterback is not because he's good. He's got less career passing yards than Will Levis. He's 2-8 in his 10 career starts. Brandon Allen is not good. But what Brandon Allen did do is he mentored Joe Burrow. He taught Brian Callahan's offense to Joe Burrow. He was the liaison in the room between Joe Burrow and Brian Callahan and Zach Taylor and the offensive decision makers in Cincinnati. Brandon Allen is a coach in the locker room. And right now, that quality is far more important than being good on the field. I will, again, bring up the Bengals situation. Joe Burrow gets hurt, tears his ACL his first season. The Bengals suck because they don't have a good backup quarterback. They get a top 5 overall pick, and they get Jamar Chase. Everybody, the next thing we're going to talk about, the next freak out, is about Femi Oladejo being a bust after 20 snaps in the preseason. He's a bust now. Everybody's freaking out. Well, if you're worried about Femi not being an answer at the edge, then you know that the Titans need to get a high-level number 1 alpha edge rusher, which I don't think that Femi Oladejo is, and I'm high on Femi, and I don't think that that's who he ultimately is going to be. So if the Titans need that, then wouldn't it be best for the Titans to get as best of a pick as they can in the draft so that they can address that alpha edge rusher position with a really, really good edge rusher draft class that's supposed to be coming up? So, again, I know I'm not the only person out here saying this. There's a lot of people in the Titans media who are saying the same thing that I am because it makes sense and the team believes it as well. Don't panic about backup quarterback because the Titans don't need a good backup quarterback. They aren't a contending team. They aren't a playoff team. They aren't a team that needs to hold the tide for a couple of weeks while Cam Ward's hurt. If it's not a long-term injury, if Cam Ward's out for 2 weeks or whatever, you still don't want a great quarterback because the Titans aren't going to be a contender anyways. What's best for the Titans is building this roster back up because as we saw out there with some of the things we should be panicked about, this team is not close to being a playoff team. This team is not close to being a contender. They need way more talent than what they have right now, and they need more blue chip players. And you get that most often high in the draft. Like, the Titans need a Cam Ward and an Abdul Carter. And boy, Abdul Carter looks absolutely disgusting for the Giants in his first appearance. Wow, really impressive. But, like, the Titans need both of those players. And they're not going to get them at the same time, as we saw. You took Cam Ward number 1. You can't get an Abdul Carter at number 3. The Titans aren't set up like that. So the only way to correct that problem for real is to get a pick where you can get a guy like that. And the Titans need 1 or 2 more guys like that, in my opinion, before they can worry about, oh, we need the best backup quarterback possible to win games if Cam's hurt. Like, that's just not what this team should be focused on, in my opinion. Now, to Femi Oladejo, panic meter. Should you panic? Again, no. You should not panic. I just think it's insane the amount of people that are already in my comments saying Femi's a bust, the Titans blew it. He played 20 snaps of NFL football, and now he's a bust, and it's over. And people say, oh, there were better edge rushers on the board. I literally have said this so many times. Yeah, there were people on the board who will be better this year. Mike Green will be better this year. There will be other players drafted after Femi who will be better this year. He is transitioning from off-ball linebacker. It's going to take him a while to develop. He is a development project. That's why I said I want him to be an early down edge, but he shouldn't be a consistent pass rusher for the Titans early on because he's not ready for that in his development. Pass rush hand usage and pass rush moves are some of the most difficult technique things to learn in football and to master in football. And Femi hasn't mastered any of it. So all of the guys that you're saying, oh, they should have picked him and picked him, they've played edge way more than Femi has. We knew that Femi Oladejo was going to be a project. We knew that the Titans weren't going to get max return on Femi in year 1. That's not how it was going to work. We said the same thing about Kevin Winston. So it's just crazy to me, the switch up, that people were so ready to crap on Femi. Yeah, the numbers are bad. Yeah, he didn't win a pass rush move. It wasn't as bad as what the TV broadcast made it look like, and I'm going to break that down on the film this week. But, like, relax. No, it is not time to panic over Femi Oladejo. He is a developmental project with great tools, great athleticism, great physical size, great potential, and great character. We knew that all along. So it's just crazy that people, oh yeah, he doesn't look like he's very polished. He doesn't look like he necessarily knows what to do. But it's because he doesn't. All right? And that's why getting him reps as much as you can is important. But moving along, the depth issues at cornerback, interior defensive line, running back at this point with the Tyjae Spears situation. Yes, you are okay to panic. But quite frankly, I have been panicked about these situations for the Titans. Before the preseason game, I've been complaining about the interior defensive line depth for 2 off seasons now. We knew that the cornerback room outside the top 4 of Sneed, Brownlee, McCreary, and Baker, we knew that the cornerback room had nothing outside of that. Like, nothing proven whatsoever that you can be excited about. So, yeah, when the cornerback group doesn't look great, and when the interior defense... Now, there are some guys on the interior defensive line who did all right. I thought Cam Horsley, number 72, he had a pretty good game. You know what I mean? I think Isaiah Rikes had an okay game as well. But I'm sorry. A lot of the guys on the interior defensive line, I'm just not a big fan of. Lynch, Timmy Horn was okay in the game as the nose tackle. He's a guy who they brought in recently, but there's just not good depth on the interior defensive line. There's not good depth in the secondary, and those are real problems that aren't going away for the Titans. The last panic meter conversation I want to have here is about Xavier Restrepo, and again, I called Restrepo a lock. I thought the chemistry and his ability to get open in games when it mattered, he's a gamer. He's a guy who's going to step up when it matters. I thought that would make him a lock to make this roster because I believed in him to prove it. But the Titans didn't really give him a lot of opportunities this week. He barely got on the field. I think he played 11 snaps on offense. Got one special team snap, which he's got to play special teams to make the roster. Just not looking good for Xavier Restrepo. I don't think that I'm going to be right about him making the roster at this point. It makes me sad that I'm going to be wrong about that potentially, but if you want to panic about Xavier Restrepo making the team, I think you're okay to panic because I don't think it's looking good for him, especially not only because of how the Titans are treating him, but you see James Prochet being clearly the best returner. They're going to have to keep him on the team, and that's the 7th wide receiver, and I don't think the Titans are going to keep 8. So if you want to panic about Xavier Restrepo, you're more than welcome to panic. But with that in mind, let's update some injuries. We got so many injury updates, and I got something to say about the Kevin Winston situation, man. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Look, we've all been there. You're logging on early. You're waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot to a show that you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as you get closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Tired of endless scrolling trying to find the best deal? Well, you get Game Time's zone deals. Tired of not knowing what your seat's going to look like? You get panoramic seat view. Tired of seeing hidden fees? You don't got to deal with that on Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying concert tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Titans fans, let's cap off today's edition of the Locked On Titans podcast. We talked about Cam Ward's performance. We talked about the panic meter on some of the concerns coming out of preseason game number 1. Now I want to get into the injury situation because we got to keep an eye on that as we move towards the regular season, move forward towards the regular season. Say that 5 times fast. But we got a big-time update on Tyjae Spears, and we got some more reporting around the weird Kevin Winston situation that's going on. Before I dive into it, though, I do want to thank you for making Locked On Titans your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Bets. Betting experts Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers have daily MLB locks and can't miss football futures. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Again, make sure that you check out my Cam Ward film breakdown out right now on the Tic Tac Titans YouTube channel. But Tyjae Spears left on a cart, was in a boot and on crutches in the locker room after the game, and people were freaking out. But for me, that tells me what I've typically seen from covering football is that is going to be a high ankle sprain, and it could be anywhere from, 2 to 8 weeks, depending on the severity of it. It sounds like things aren't as bad as they could have been for Tyjae Spears. Brian Callahan said that he'll probably be out for a few weeks and confirmed it is a high ankle sprain. A few weeks. Adam Schefter had a report out that the Titans expect Tyjae Spears could be back for the regular season, so that's good news. But in the meantime, the Titans probably need to bring in another running back just to take carries. If they think that Spears is going to miss any significant time into the regular season, they absolutely have to bring in veteran help because, again, Tony Pollard cannot take the workload that he had last season or he will break down. Now, I do want to talk about Kevin Winston because his situation is weird. So, Winston played all of training camp up until the end of last weekend. And then they said they were going to manage some soreness. and he hasn't played in 6 days. Didn't play in the preseason game, hasn't played in practice at all from last week, didn't play in the joint practices. And then Brian Callahan said earlier this weekend, there's no new injury to report with Kevin Winston. There's no injury to talk about. They're just managing his soreness. Okay, there's no injury. You're just managing him. All right, that makes sense. They have a rest plan for him. That makes sense. Well, then on Sunday's press conference after the game, Brian Callahan said that he doesn't know when Kevin Winston's going to return. So I would ask, if you guys have him on a management rest plan, then how do you not know when he's going to return? That doesn't sound like planned rest. That sounds like a reaction to something. And then we get some reporting from Nick Suss of the Tennessean, I believe, saying that Kevin Winston is managing new, quote from the article, quote, new injuries and soreness. So he is dealing with injuries, a new injury, according to Nick Suss. Although Brian Callahan said a couple of days ago, there was no injury to report and they're just managing soreness. And then Paul Kaharski reported that there might be some hamstring tightness associated to the knee that he had ACL recovery surgery on. Okay, well, then Brian Callahan is not telling the truth about what's going on. This isn't planned maintenance and planned rest. This is, hey, he had a hamstring reaction in the same leg next to the knee that he had the ACL tear on. We worked him too hard in 5 straight padded practices in 6 days, and now we got to dial it all the way back. So either Brian Callahan is lying about there not being an injury, and it's just soreness, and there is an injury to manage, or the other side of it is there is no injury, but the Titans overworked him too soon, and now he's got excessive soreness where he's going to have to sit out multiple weeks to get over the soreness. So there's 2 ways. Either the Titans are lying and there is an injury, or they overworked Kevin Winston and now they got to back him down. No matter which way you intellectually want to go, the Titans had bad process. Either they overworked him or they're lying about his injury and putting a spotlight on him and making it, again, Mike Vrabel lied all the time about injuries, and in my opinion, he thought he was protecting his players by doing that. But what I think is, by not being transparent, you create more conversation. You create me doing this right now. You create fans all over social media wondering what's going on, pontificating about what could be the problem. What you do is you open Pandora's box when you aren't transparent about these types of things. So Brian Callahan skirting around the truth and playing the semantics game and all of the injuries. Now, all the beat reporters are putting out tweets about what they've heard. And when you try to make things a mystery, you make it worse on everyone. Now, I want to read this tweet from Teron Davenport from ESPN with more clarity on Kevin Winston Jr. Quote, he's dealing with normal soreness that comes from post-ACL surgery recovery. Brian Callahan has mentioned before about being smart and carefully managing select players during training camp. Winston is one of them. Titans don't want to send him on the field while dealing with soreness. Not sure the risk of re-injury outweighs the reward. Big picture approach is to have him healthy and ready to go from week 1. And all of that messaging makes sense from the team. But what doesn't make sense is Brian Callahan saying, I don't know when he's going to be back. And what doesn't make sense to me is if he's so sore that he has to miss multiple weeks of practice, then that means you overworked him in the first place. So again, if the answer is, hey, he's just super, super sore, well, I think the better approach is practice a couple of days, rest a couple of days, practice a couple of days, play in the joint practices, play in the preseason games. I think that running him into the ground 5 straight padded practices in 6 days and then making him sit out 2 weeks, that doesn't make any sense to me. A couple of days on, a couple of days to rest. A couple of days on, a couple of days to rest. You can play in the joint practices. You can play in the preseason games where you get live reps. That makes way more sense to me than what this is, because this wasn't a plan. They did not plan on him being as sore as he is. They did not plan on Kevin Winston missing 2 weeks of practices in the middle of training camp. That was not the plan. I don't buy that. So that's the update on Winston, and it doesn't make any sense. Now, some other updates. T'Vondre Sweat, the abdominal issue. And again, look at that. T'Vondre Sweat's abdominal issue. It came out on the broadcast during the game that actually T'Vondre Sweat had his tonsils out. Why would they call getting your tonsils out an abdominal issue? Maybe there's medical people listening who can make that make sense to me. Like, oh, well, actually, your tonsils are connected to the thigh bone, but whatever. And be like, oh, that. But again, to me, that's just weird lies. Why say he has an abdominal issue? Why not just say, hey, T'Vondre Sweat's getting his tonsils taken out. He's going to be out a week. Like, why? It just creates more speculation. It adds gasoline onto the fire of the conversation. But Brian Callahan said that they're hoping that they get T'Vondre Sweat back for joint practices later this week. They're giving him a few more days to recover from having his tonsils out. Okay, that's normal. That's a regular person thing to deal with. But again, why cloud it in mystery? L'Jarius Sneed, we didn't know that he had a serious quad issue last year until 3 weeks after he already had a surgery. We heard about Lloyd Cushenberry's surgery on his Achilles before we heard about Sneed's surgery. So they omitted and skirted around the truth on that. We didn't know that Treylon Burks had an ACL injury until 3 weeks after his injury happened. The Titans have historically, not just Brian Callahan, not just Mike Vrabel, the Titans historically have hid, omitted, skirted around the truth, injury situations. So back to the Kevin Winston thing, forgive me if I'm skeptical of this organization and football teams in general, because football teams lie. It's just the truth. So again, T'Vondre Sweat had his tonsils out, and he'll be back in a couple of days at least. Anyways, moving right along with L'Jarius Sneed. Brian Callahan said that they expect Lloyd Cushenberry back sooner than Sneed. Cush might get out on the field at some point this week and start warming up, and they're not as certain about Sneed. Lloyd Cushenberry is a 300-pound offensive lineman that tore his Achilles after L'Jarius Sneed had a quad injury and then a knee cleanup that we didn't find out about until 2 months after it happened, of course. Even though I'm as healthy as I've ever been, shrouded in mystery, Tennessee Titans. The fact that Cushenberry is going to get back on a field and do football stuff before L'Jarius Sneed, again, as I've said a couple of weeks ago, months ago, my optimism for L'Jarius Sneed ever playing high-quality, meaningful snaps for the Titans is so low right now. Cushenberry, though, like I said, the Titans said maybe this week he could get back out on the field and start doing stuff. Blake Hance, Brian Callahan said he's hopeful to get back out on the field, the Titans' backup interior offensive lineman. And then do want to mention that Anthony Ojiri or Orgy or however you pronounce his name, I've heard every different version. He tore his ACL in practice over the weekend, last weekend, and is out for the entire season. I didn't expect him to be a primary contributor, especially with James Williams and Cedric Gray looking pretty good, but with Otis Reese basically not playing at all in the preseason game, which is surprising. He didn't play at all in the preseason game. That gives the depth linebackers a better shot, so that's disappointing for Anthony Ojiri. But with that being said, tomorrow, I'm going to be previewing joint practices against the Atlanta Falcons Tuesday, Wednesday. I'll be here to break down what happened at those practices. But that's going to do it for me today, folks. As always, I am your host, Tyler Rowland, and this was Locked On Titans.